So I'm into the first box here of the Shapeoko 4XL. The base frame comes in its own box with the side skirts, some of the hardware, and as they mentioned in the video, one of the rails here comes with the spacers disconnected, so that's one of the first things I'm going to do is put that on. And then frankly, I am going through this video, so this is more of me just commenting on what it takes for me to put this together, not a replacement for the instructional video. Here's the first bit of faith that I'm looking for. When you look in the installation video, I believe it says that these shrouds are lined up so that these two holes are facing the back. And so in this case, the back's going to be towards the wall. And these two things are symmetrical, and so I'm hoping I have them in the correct order. It seems like it's going to work right, but as referred to in the video, I'm not going to tighten down anything too hard, just in case I have to take it apart later. Another thing that I didn't see until I put the nuts in place was that the side panel that holds the computer actually reuses those same bolt holes, and so you take the two button head screws out, and then you put them back in. So now I know, now you know. Putting on the gantry piece was the first real section where I had a really difficult time, and part of it is the instruction where you're supposed to put the concentric nut at the 6 o'clock position. Unfortunately, it's not really clear what that is, and through trial and error, you can see here that this nut has a little bit of an indentation mark here, and so I put all of those facing upwards, and the gantry started to fit on. And so I think what happens here is by putting the nut that way, you loosen up the wheels, which makes them just far enough apart so that you can slip the V wheels onto the V track. And so hopefully I've got this right and continue on with the installation. In terms of putting the Endplates on, if you're facing the machine this way, this side is the left, that side's the right. And so the two Endplates for the front, the one without the electronics goes on the left, power switch goes on the right, and then on the back side, the one with the proximity sensor goes also on the right side if you're facing the machine. And then the one on the back side is just the regular metal plate, no electronics. I've squared up the machine at this point, and it's starting to look like you'd expect a CNC machine to look like. One thing that I'll warn you about is when you're tightening down these shoulder bolts and you're using the wrench, just be careful. If you flip the wrench over, one side has a ball end and one side's a hex end. If you put the hex end in hoping to get a little bit more leverage, it's possible to really to strip out the inside of that shoulder bolt. I did it just slightly, I think. It probably didn't do too much damage, but be careful when you're putting torque on those, because hex wrenches can definitely slip pretty quickly. For the support panel that goes across, this is another situation where you have these nuts, and to be able to put the V wheels on the back here, I needed to have them in the 12 o'clock position. And so next what I'm going to do, according to the video, is tighten down the button head screws on this side and then twist these nuts using the wrench till the wheels just barely grab onto the V groove that's up here and down here on the cross member, and that's how we're going to adjust the V wheels. I installed the first belt hopefully correctly based on the instruction video. It wasn't really clear to me how you determine how much belt to have overlapping and whether it matters at all if you have a big tail like this. I tried to understand the instruction of just being able to touch, to add the bolt in here without bringing it in all the way. And, it goes over the stepper motor pretty fine. So, in that sense, this seems like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Hopefully it'll become a lot more obvious after I put the second one on and then put the X-axis one on. I'm just about 2 hours in. I've installed the belts on the two Ys, and now I'm at the point where I'm getting a little frustrated, so I'm going to stop for the night. The biggest place I'm getting frustrated is for the X-axis. If you watch the YouTube video now, it's clear that they're doing it in different steps, the steps in a different order than what they're actually showing here. And so parts already exist on there that don't exist on my machine. And so now I have to kind of figure out what the proper order is. If I need to go and make my machine look like it does on YouTube when it hasn't told me those instructions yet, or if I should follow them in the order and then see if they kind of get back to where they were. And so I'm going to stop right now. It's just about 10 o'clock in the evening at this point. And as I said, if I keep going any longer, I'm just going to get frustrated. And, that's when you make mistakes. So I'll come back to this tomorrow, and I should be able to finish up the machine. Back the next morning, I spent some time watching the YouTube video all the way through, and I'm unblocked from where I was frustrated yesterday. The videos are definitely out of order, and they show things that you haven't installed yet. And so what I did was I skipped over putting the belt onto the gantry and then just put the XZ controller onto the arm. Now, when I go around and install whatever this thing is called, then when I put the belt on, it looks like it's going to make a lot more sense. And so hopefully there won't be more than an hour's worth of work today, and I can start playing with the machine this afternoon. Got the motor mounted now, and I have the belt as well. It's a lot more obvious here doing this belt because it appears to be the right size. And by the right size, I mean the XL machine, the difference between the XL machine and the double XL machine is only in this axis this way. And so this belt doesn't seem to have all the extra that this belt does. Unfortunately, in the XXL, they don't make a reference about what to do with that. So I'll end up sending a message to support and ask if I'm supposed to cut this off or what I'm supposed to do with all this excess belt. But we're getting to the point now where there's process of elimination. There are very few parts left. And so it makes it a whole lot easier to go through and say, what goes where or what screws go where because so few of them actually remain. For the shroud here, I'm trying to work process of elimination. In the video, it shows putting the cable management parts on first, but given the number of holes that are here, it's not really clear where they might go. And so I found the bag that says X-axis shroud hardware. This has 5 bolts for it. And so I'm going to put those on first to fill up those holes. The shroud will be connected. Then I'll figure out how to take these wire nuts and find some holes that are a little bit more obvious where these screws might go so that I can have the cable management running even though I'm doing it a little bit different than the video is. Process of elimination sort of worked. Once I put the shroud on with the 5 bolts and then tried to do the cable management, trying to work upside down is just a pain in the butt. So I ended up taking this off, and it looks like it's this hole, and this hole for the cable management ties. Now, they give you 4, and that's only 3 holes, so I'll have to take a look and see if it's a little bit more obvious later, but that's what I'm going with here. With those cable ties in place, it seems to make a little bit more sense to me. And so you have this cable, looks like it says YL motor. And so what you're going to do is come underneath here, put these into the clips, and then it came with a big bag. It came with a big bag of cable ties like this. And so what these things do is have a little thing in the side where you can put the cable, put the cable in the little wings there, and then that will make a loop, and that's what will hold it to the shroud. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to pull the cable ties tight, though. They give you a bag of like 50 or 100, and so even if I have to snip it later, I shouldn't run out. Now took the shroud off a second time because it was almost impossible to get these zip ties in through the holes. And so, by taking it off again, now I can loop them around. And I guess the play here is to loop the wires through instead of trying to pin them up themselves. This is an area where I really wish there was more than just a 2-second blurb in the video, because this is getting pretty frustrating. So now with these loops set up this way, I can feed the wires through after putting the shroud on, then pull them tight when I'm sure that I have this correct, and that will keep the cables nice and tidy. Hey, the drag chain assembly comes with additional instructions, so hopefully this won't be too bad. The video talks about it quite a bit, and obviously I have the instructions here too, and so we'll see how this goes. So you put the drag chain bracket over here. On the printed instructions, it shows the 6mm spacer being orange. It's actually a black honeycomb plastic type of piece. So I put that on there. I think I have the drag chain in the proper place this way. Talk about paying attention to which way the cables go. This side has the male ends. The motor up here has a male end, and then these pieces over here are female ends. So my assumption is that the female end and the male end go together here, and so hopefully I'm correct in assuming that. It looks like my faith from the top up here is starting to pay off. If you look at all these connectors, they likely have somewhere in here to connect to, and so that's a good sign. Later on in the video, they also show these gray wires coming this way towards the sensing switch, and so I think I have both of the cables set up properly at this point. One area that I wasn't paying attention to and had to redo was there's a 2mm spacer that's supposed to go underneath to make this chain move better. I connected this first with the tiny screws, which was hard enough, and then I had to take them out and do it again. And so as you're going through this, don't forget the little 2mm washer right here. Putting the router mount on the Z-axis was pretty easy. From the video, it shows that you make the router cord go towards the left side of the machine. And so now I just need to go through and put the power cord from the router inside the chain for the router cord, and then attach it to the back. And so luckily I've already done a couple of these, so hopefully it won't be too bad, and we're getting close to having no more parts left. Now 4 hours in, I've got the router mounted. I started doing the power cord, but I've almost certainly done this backwards, as I need the plug to come through the top here, but it doesn't seem to fit. So I suspect that means I've actually done this backwards. But I got to stop working for a little bit. But I think the key takeaway here is I've done two 2-hour sessions now. And so for anybody that's going ahead to actually put this together, you shouldn't plan to do it in one sitting. One, because the frustration will build, but two, it's actually really hard on your fingers, snapping all these things and turning the tiny wrenches and so on. And so plan for multiple sessions, whether the same day or multiple days. So I've taken the chain off the router power cord, and to answer the question of whether or not you can do this backwards, it does appear that way. I've rotated the chain around, and now I can have the power cord coming out of the top here. And so maybe that's something for everyone to sort of pay attention to when you're putting the cord on. Maybe start at the end and then do all the clips. That way you can make sure that you have everything set up in the right direction. To make this work the way I think it should work, I ended up taking off the end pieces. They just snap apart, like a watch band might or something. And so this one was flipped over the other way. So I flipped it this way because it seems like, I want to attach it right here into the mounts. But if it was flipped over the other way, the screws wouldn't match up. And so I'm going to attach that right here and hope for the best. Same thing here. Taking off this little clip seems to make this process easier. You just take it off like that and then fold it underneath again to make sure that the cord comes out the top instead of being pinned underneath the bottom. I'm in the home stretch now. I've taken the metal slats and put them down, took all the MDF panels off. I don't anticipate having too much of an issue here. As the video mentions, just go slow to make sure you don't cross thread any of the holes. I'm going to do this all by hand. I'm not going to use any power tools. So about hour 6 at this point, and all the mechanical assembly is done. I'm pretty confident that I did it correctly. Everything seems to fit the way I would expect it. I don't have a tremendous amount of extra parts. I didn't go into the extra parts bag at all. And so I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to do the wiring later, since that can always be fiddly no matter what you're working on. And then I can test out the machine, make sure everything's okay, and start making things. Putting the wiring together isn't that difficult if you've ever assembled your own computer. The circuit board has all the markings, and the connectors generally only fit in one place on the board. Putting this piece on was a little bit difficult, as you have to jam all the wires in there. There's another piece which I didn't quite understand about doing the cabling. It seems to indicate that you put one of the sticky holders up there, but I couldn't figure out how to make any of that work by doing that. And so it seemed really obvious to me that I would just actually put them on the underneath rails. I don't know if I'm missing the plot or what on this, but when you move the gantry, okay, you don't have any wires in the way, and so this seems more correct to me than trying to stick it right here and thread it through the different areas. One last thing that I had that didn't make sense to me is it didn't seem like the hole where they say to mark the ground wire actually has a long enough screw to fit. And so what I did was I put the ground wire on the back aluminum plate here. All of these things are touching one another, and so hopefully my logic is right and this actually works the same way as a ground. If not, then I'm in deep trouble, I suppose. But that should be it for the most part. Have the wiring and everything assembled. I just need to go through, maybe put a couple more wire ties in a few different areas. This whole area here, when you go to put those wires together, I just matched them up, and so you can find it says X motor and YL motor, and you have a male and a female, and so I went through and connected all of those. And so, like I said, besides putting some wire ties on that and maybe some wire ties on the other side for the router plug, hopefully I have a working CNC machine. All the setup's done. Now we're just watching it jog around. test out that the homing switches are working. You can see it's lighting up, so that's good. Kind of hard to get in there for this one, but that one's working. So as far as I can tell, that's it. I have a working machine. I'm obviously going to play with this a considerable bit more. It took me about 8 hours total to put this together. 6 hours to do the construction, 2 hours to go ahead and do all the wiring and things. This video really wasn't meant to be super polished. I was going through and making comments just as things were happening, and so hopefully this will be useful to some of you. If you'd like content like this, of course, I'm going to be making more Shapeoko 4 content. So please hit like, subscribe, and can't wait to show you the things that I'm making.